So as people are coming in, Andy, you were telling me about this camo thing. Just keep telling me the story.
Sure, it's a nice story about a friend of mine, and it's one of these pivot stories from COVID-19 and lockdown. And the cameras in Macs actually have been getting worse and worse over the years as they make them slimmer and smaller and lighter. Meanwhile, the cameras in iPhones have been getting better and better as they compete with digital cameras. So he's developed an app whereby you can use your iPhone as the camera for your computer when you're on a Zoom call like this. And it's currently in beta testing. And I just think it's such a great idea. And so I'm one of the beta testers for Camo.
Yeah, and it's good advertising too, because it's got the little logo up here every time that you're on the.
Well, I was saying to him, because he's trying to figure out the business model for how to do it. And I was thinking, you know, one way is, because that's pretty valuable real estate. If you have a lot of users, if you set it out for free, is I'm sure people would want to sponsor that space.
Yeah, yeah, that's right. So, put me on, and you called it what kind of testing?
It's beta testing. So it's not publicly available yet. If you go to the website's called reincubate.com, and you can apply there for beta testing. And yeah, it just, the quality of picture is noticeably different. So if you're on a conference call with a bunch of people, you'll just be crisper and clearer than everyone else.
I just like hearing you say beta testing.
How do you say that?
Beta.
Oh, right. Yes, yes.
BADA, beta. I've always enjoyed speaking with you, man. I appreciate you being here with us today, all the way from Oxford. Andy Clayton, who is our partner over there. So Andy runs all of Petra Europe. It's a separate organization, and he does a fantastic job. We thought it might be a good idea to just kind of put the both of us on a call today and chat through maybe some of the differences from US and Europe. And then Mr. Clayton has a little different perspective because he lived in China, worked in China, ran companies in China, and he has a lot of connections still there. So he can give us some insight there. Strong entrepreneurial background. I'll give you just a quick introduction. Prior to becoming a coach, he used the Rockefeller habits to successfully scale his agency business in China, as I said, and then went on to sell it to his largest competitor. He's also a senior trainer with Entrepreneurs Organization, EO. So if you're familiar, anybody in the audience familiar with the Accelerator program, Mr. Clayton puts all that content together and does a ton of work to keep young minds growing. Today, if you've seen Coach's Corner before, you know that there's about an hour-long Q&A session. All of us are certified Petra coaches, and any and all things that you bring to the table, we will do our very best to answer those questions. Again, we decided to mix it up and just bring Andy and Andy on here. And bottom of the screen, if you got a question, now's the time to start asking them. Just poke it in the Q&A section, and we will answer those. If you're on Facebook and you're watching this, just put it in the comments, and we have Leah, who is monitoring Facebook for us, and she'll jump in with any questions that you guys may have for Andy and Andy to kind of bounce back and forth and answer. Catch me up on, I haven't talked to you in a couple of weeks probably, so kind of catch me up and the audience up on how are things in Europe, and you know, what phase are you in, where are you guys, and I can kind of fill it in the gaps from this side if you like.
Sure. Well, I was saying to you previously, it seems to be moving right from east to west. So in Europe, the UK has been a little bit behind other countries in terms of lockdown. So we have been in lockdown here. It's been 100 days, and we're just emerging out the other side. So as of tomorrow, restaurants, hotels, bars, those sorts of things will be opening again. In mainland Europe, those have already been open for a few weeks. So my father lives in Brussels, and yeah, the cafes have been spilling out over into the streets already for a few weeks there. So they're ahead of us. We went into lockdown later. We're coming out a bit later than they are. So Europe is re-emerging, but obviously it's not quite the same as previously. There's still a lot of social distancing. So it's not lockdown anymore, but social distancing is very much being enforced. So it's a very strange experience here, going to the shops, you know, the queues around the block just in order to get into the supermarkets and whatnot.
When you say, how about you? You say it's been a few weeks, is it 10 days? Is it 2? Because I think that number is very important.
You mean in mainland Europe?
Yeah.
I'm going to say 2 weeks. I think it's been that they have reopened restaurants and bars. Again, I think it's more outside spaces have opened before, but even interior spaces now in mainland Europe are reopening. What's the status in the States?
Oh, it's all over the place. So you've got sections of the country that did their reopening 30, 45, as many as probably closer to 60 days ago, and are now kind of reverting back. So phase 3 going to phase 2. I think there's additional restrictions. And I looked at a chart this morning where it had the US, the rates going up pretty quickly, and it was actually a comparison to Europe. So it's interesting to hear that you guys are just kind of starting to the point of reopening where we've been through it for different parts of the country, but been through it for probably at least a month. And we're seeing, pretty dramatic increase in positive cases through that. So
yeah, I mean, the good news here is that case loads and deaths have really dropped right down. So it's a pretty neat curve. It shot right up, and now it's very much leveling down. Although the UK has been, I'm sure there's all sorts of reasons why, but we've fared worse than pretty much any other country. Whether you look at the number of deaths, the economic impact, number of cases, we haven't had a very good crisis, I don't think, as a country.
Why do you think that is? Why do you think that's different than other parts of the world? And then I'm going to ask you about China.
Yeah, so the UK government had their response initially. So we have a prime minister and administration which are, for us, towards slightly more the right wing of politics, and quite libertarian. And so when this all happened, there was flirting with this idea of herd immunity, and so they were talking about flattening the curve, and so not going into lockdown too hard and letting immunity kind of spread through the population. But then when they realized that what the experience of other countries and this exponential growth would mean that the number of deaths would go off the charts, they then had to follow other countries. But by that point, 2 or 3 weeks had passed, and that's how exponential growth curves. If you miss that window, you just end up with more cases. So I think it's a mixture of things. I think there's something cultural at play here. So dare I say, Anglo-Saxon kind of culture of individual and libertarian means that instinctively that kind of authoritarian lockdown type approach just doesn't kind of sit so well with people, and that served us very badly as a culture. And at the same time, yeah, there was confusion in the advice, the scientific advice that they were going to take, whereas a lot of countries, they went for the nip it in the bud, like slam it down hard and fast. Here it was this idea of maybe herd immunity, but I think that has not been vindicated.
So I think in the beginning of the pandemic, we had lots of information coming out of China. China was on the news every day. We knew exactly what the numbers were and exactly what's going on. Just kind of looking, instinctively kind of thinking about it. I don't think I've heard anything about any of this in China at this point, but you've got a unique perspective on it because you live there, work there, build companies there, and are interacting with people from there all the time. Tell us a little bit, not in person, by the way, but tell us a little bit about what you're hearing.
So it's remarkable. China, so a friend of mine has a restaurant in a city down in the southwest of China. And I was talking to her the other day and I said, how's business? And she says, it's just like this time last year. Restaurant is open, no social distancing, no cases. Life's just gone back to normal. My wife's family are from the southwest of China. They're all back to work. I mean, international travel clearly isn't what it was. So the country is kind of isolated, but it's in itself, it's a continental sized economy. So that doesn't hit them too hard. I guess exports industries are down, but in terms of day-to-day life in the majority of the country, it's gone back to normal, which is astonishing when you think that they were the first ones to be hit by this. And their initial hit in Hubei province was significant. Like there was dead people in the hospitals and the streets, and so their approach and their tactics of like a very hard lockdown, rigorously enforced with a lot of surveillance, actually in the situation of a pandemic, seems to be effective. And now it's allowed their population to go back to life as normal. Now there are outbreaks. So Beijing had one recently, and when one of those springs up, they'll isolate it and they'll lock down that. In fact, we've had the same thing happening in the UK. The city of Leicester is on a city lockdown now. So that's a policy that's been in place in China. But it's very interesting when you see the degree of surveillance that they've put in place. Exactly. Like what she was telling me is that you can, if you wanted to find out in my city here in England who had this case, where they lived, how many people, you couldn't find that out. You might be able to, on a city level, get approximate data, but in China, you know who's had it, who's died, where they live, their address. It's all public information. So this idea of personal privacy is very, very different over there. And in the context of solving a pandemic, that's kind of served them well.
Yeah, I watched, there was an American who was living there, and it was just happened to be on YouTube, and somebody sent it to me, and it was it was probably maybe a month ago, but he was walking through the technology and how they're using technology for tracing. And,
yep.
You know, they buy everything, you know, he was there, he purchases everything with his phone. There is no dollar or money exchange or coins or everything. So the tracking of where you've been, all of the facial recognition from the cameras in the streets, and they know everything about everybody. Therefore, when you wake up in the morning, you know on your phone, hey, yesterday I was exposed to someone, I'm in the red, I can't go anywhere. I mean, it's like an automatic update, because as testing happens, they know who you were around. It's not something you have to personally keep up with. It's very much policed.
Yeah, that's right. So it's uncomfortable, because personally, I've lived in that kind of society. I didn't like it. That's one of the reasons I chose to leave China. But now when I observe people there being free to go about their daily lives, kind of because of this surveillance state, it's an uncomfortable, you know, reality to this kind of situation.
We'll see if we can get some questions rolling in. If you guys have any questions about, you know, China, UK, US, pretty much anything else that might be going on, you want to ask a quick question, please just post it in the Q&A box, and we'll bounce it around. And Mr. Clayton has a depth of knowledge in a lot of different areas too. Tell me how the pandemic has impacted the coaching side of what you guys do, and what you're doing differently, and what do you kind of see in the future over there?
Well, obviously, like everyone, we had to switch to virtual delivery, which has been very effective. Different people with, you know, certain personalities prefer in-person work, but in terms of getting the job done, virtual for what we do is actually a really, really good product. So that's all been good. We lost some business, of course, like everybody. And we've, in some cases, you know, there's had to be some rejigging of fees just to accept the reality. So in a situation where teams are taking big salary cuts themselves, you know, we've had to participate in that. Where we're at now is that it's, you know, obviously the business has taken a downturn, but there's been a solid core of our members that we have worked through this situation with, and they're, you know, starting to come out the other side. Now we obviously get a skewed data set because we've continued to work with the companies for whom there is a way through. So I'm probably skewed towards a positive bias because the companies I work with have that kind of a path through. But yeah, you know, by and large, they've got the initial crisis reaction and response is behind them. Although there's still quite a lot of companies here that are going through the process of letting people go, because we've had a lot of government support for furloughing, which means that the government will pay salaries for a while, but that's now winding down. So companies are facing choices.
Is that a standard thing? Is that new to COVID for you guys?
Yeah, it is.
And what's the period? So if I got laid off and I made you know, $30K a year, the government's going to pay me my $30K for how long?
So they pay up to 80%, and the employer can top up the remaining 20% if they choose to. It's capped at £2,500 per month. So regardless of what your pre-COVID salary was, that's the upper limit, which is, you know,
give me £2,500 US.
So that's give or take $3,200 thereabouts, about $3,000, which is, you know, a reasonable living wage. Obviously, if you're a higher paid person, that would be a haircut. And it's been at that level now since March. So March, April, May, June, right until now. And I think next month that'll be the case. And now it's going to get phased down. So I think it goes from 80, 60, 50, and then by October, it'll be phased out. And so what that's done is two things. It means that for those companies whereby there has been this dip in business, but it's now returning, they've been able to retain their workforce, which is generally a healthy thing for those companies, for the economy as a whole. But the other thing that it's done is it's deferred a problem of unemployment from, you know, the first half of the year to the second half of the year. And so a lot of the companies we work with now, they're at the stage of having made or are making the decisions as to who's going to stick around in the 2.0 version of our business and who we're going to let go.
What other kind of government interaction assistance here? We had what's called PPP. You've been on a few of our calls, so you're familiar with the Paycheck Protection Program. Similar to that, it goes directly to the organization, and they can choose to use it, and they get, it gets forgiven, so you don't have to pay that back. There's other programs here. There was a news this morning that they're extending some of that and changing some of that. So I think it's ongoing. What do you see? What else has the government done? Is it working or not working? And what do you think that's going to either happen in the future, where you hear that's going to happen, or what's going to have to happen?
So there's generally three types. So furlough has been a big one, and that's all about maintaining employment. And that's been a great lifeline. I mean, I think business owners and employees around the country would say that furlough has been critical to keeping, I mean, obviously the economy is badly hit, but it's not totally in tatters. The second would be grants. So that's been targeted particularly at the sectors, hospitality, restaurants. So anyone that pays what we call business rates. So if you're paying your equivalent of like a property tax on facilities. So for companies that are in that bracket, they have access to loans. They're of the range of, there's £10,000, £25,000, £50,000, those types of grants. So that's in the region of like $15,000 to $60,000, $70,000, and that's targeted at particularly that kind of local restaurant, retail type market. So that's, my sister actually works in the government, which is involved in handing these things out, and there's a lot of payouts have been made. And then the third would be loans. So low interest loans over, I think it's a 6-year period. There's now this thing called bounce back loans. So the first year is interest free, and then there is some interest, but it's very preferential.
I love how your government names things very practically. The U.S. calls things, and they're like, "What is that?" Like your bounce back loan sounds much like perfectly named. So well done.
It's well branded, yes.
Keep going. I'm sorry.
Well, so those are the three main areas. Is that similar to how it's working over there?
Yeah, similar. We have this thing called Main Street funding that's coming up that gives us the ability to have, so that they're kind of offering dollars that are inexpensive to get, right? So you have, again, EIDL, emergency, blah, blah, blah. So, and your eyebrows went up when I said EIDL instead of bounce back. But we have availability to go get money. One of my concerns long-term is, and I mean long-term, like in the next 12 months, everybody's gotten this money. Do they have the ability to actually pay it back, right? So how many businesses are going to do the right thing with the dollar so that they can pay this back? And what happens to the financial industry because of that? Because all of this stuff is going through a bank. It's all FDIC insured and backed, but I see some challenges. I saw in the U.S. This morning, I saw Cirque du Soleil filed for bankruptcy, laid off 3,500 people. And I've got a friend in the turnaround business, restructure. And since February, early February, they can't hire enough people to get even the phone answered. Like it's the amount of businesses that are filing bankruptcy and protection, going through the restructure process is off the charts. I assume it's the same there.
Sure. I mean, retail is the big one that's been hit here. So Into, who are, I think, the largest operator of essentially shopping malls, they've filed for bankruptcy. A lot of high street retail chains have gone under or will do. So yeah, it's pretty sector specific, but in those industries, a lot has come, and I'm sure there's more to come there as well.
I had a conversation with someone just right before this call, and there's people that are still fighting to stay in their business. There's people that are, and let's use retail for an example. Like there's people that are fighting to stay in retail. There's a point at which I think as a coach, it's kind of our responsibility to go, look, let's go fight another fight. Let's figure out how we take our assets, the things that we're really good at, that we love to do, that we do better than anybody else. And let's point that effort and energy in something else that's not a dumpster fire that we're never going to put out. You said something earlier, and you said it in a different context, but I think it was really important because you talked about exponential growth, exponential growth. And you said, but not if you miss the window. And I think that you were talking about COVID and COVID, virus spreading, but I think that applies to businesses today, that there is the opportunity to exponentially grow an organization, but not if you miss the window. And many organizations, because of this turmoil and disruption, the window is right now, and they need to open the damn window.
So we call that the land grab. And what we've seen is that there is this sudden shock disruption event that has changed behavior. So the way that people find information about companies, the way they buy things, the way that they expect services to be delivered, and that's in B2C, B2B, across a huge range of industries, it's suddenly changed. And so what that means is that there is new territory up for grabs. So one of our members, they're an events business. They're one of the top 2 worldwide for the SaaS industry, called SaaStock. And they were like that in terms of their pivot, because they realized that someone is going to own that space of online SaaS events. Like, someone's going to take it and we have to move first. And so I've been asking that question a lot of business leaders. Well, where's the land grab in your industry? Because someone's going to move, someone's going to have an online presence or a way of delivering what you do virtually, and then, are you going to be the one to get there first?
Yeah. And the window is cracked. You got to kick it all the way open, right? There's nobody going to drag you in that direction. You got to go fight for it. I got a question. So I'm going to ask the question. I want you to respond first, and then I'll come back and see if I can add to it. It says, so it says coaching question. I have a new client whose boss has hired me to help him understand that building strong relationships at work will make him a better leader. He currently has not bought into the process or this concept. So I have a new client whose boss has hired me to help him understand. I don't know if the person that this person is working with actually hired him or if it's somebody else. He currently has not bought into the process or the concept. Additionally, there are no consequences for him when he treats people poorly because he gets good business results, regardless of his scorched earth approach with people. Any advice on helping him see the value in putting time and effort into building relationships and being more versatile in his leadership approach? So I have boss hired me to help him.
So is it the boss that's scorched earth or the team member?
Yeah, it feels like the team member is probably the scorched earth manager, supervisor, leader, and they're whoever he or she might report to said, hey, we got to get this joker some help because it's killing our mojo. Right. I think that's the scenario. So
in that sort of situation, and we hear that a lot, and those people tend to sit in the sales departments and kind of IT development departments is where you find those jokers. There's a model, the talent assessment chart, that I find just gives people a very, very good, clear mental model for explaining that kind of person. And it's, you've got performance, you bring it right, you've got performance on one axis, and then you've got fit with core values on the other. And you divide people into the four areas. You got A players, people performing well, fitting in well. B players are those ones who fit in well with our way of doing things, but maybe aren't delivering the results. And this person sits in the bottom right-hand corner. There's a BC. So we love the results that you're getting. You're bringing in the bacon, but you are disruptive and you are causing difficulty for the rest of the team and you're not fitting in. And explaining that conceptual model, both to the leader and to the individual, I find just, it sets off light bulbs. And there's one of two outcomes of that. It's either, there's a difficult conversation about, do you realize the impact that you're having on the rest of the team, and are you willing to change? In which case, we'll work with you. Or the price is too high for that kind of behavior and the cost for the rest of the team, and ultimately it's not a good fit. How about you?
No, I think that's a really good explanation. We usually see it in sales. It's the $4 million a year producer who, the CEO is like, we can't get rid of them, right? So there's a couple options in this, right? So the first is I call it a come to Jesus meeting. We're going to have this conversation. You're going to do these three things. They will happen by Friday, especially if the CEO is not the one that's in the seat, it's somebody that's in the organization. Friday at 3:00, if it's not done, man, Monday, you're not going to be here, and see if that can change some behaviors. Or you build a wall and you segment that person so much off from everybody else. You almost hire, a person to manage the person that if you're not going to get rid of them, you better build a wall. you better segment the organization from that individual if that's going to be the case. Only because it's going to continually disrupt. And you know, we've had this BEC conversation with hundreds of people, and I would tell you that 20% of the time they actually act on it. Maybe they go have that conversation. Most of the time they do not. It usually goes on for months, if not years. And eventually the person leaves, quits, goes to a competitor, takes half your business with them anyway.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
So it's better to just jump on this pretty quickly and have that conversation to begin to get them to buy in. Another way to do this is, and we did this exercise yesterday with a group where we do essentially stop, start, continue, right? So you would put this person in a room with their peers, and then and potentially a manager or two, could be the boss of the organization, could be somebody on the front line, doesn't matter, but people that interact with this person. And then everybody is going to go through the exercise, not just this individual. But if it were, you know, me, Andy and Leah, then I'm going to have a chance to tell Andy, because he's going to be on the hot seat, here's one thing that you do really well that you need to continue to do because it brings great value. Here's one thing that I need you to stop doing because it detracts from everything that happens here, right? So start, and here's something I need you to start doing because you need to start doing this to add additional value. So start, keep. And if you do that with a room of 6 to 10, you usually begin to see a pattern. So, you know, Andy would see a pattern of behavior because more than one person was telling him the same information, and it might start to ring true. And because he gets to participate in that with other team members, it's not quite as, oh shit, they're jumping on me. It's everybody is learning something about behavioral change to begin that buying process. And it still is not something that works a lot.
No.
Yeah.
I had one of those guys in my old company. Took me a year. And guess what? He left and went to our biggest competitor, tried to take half the team. And it was an absolute, I don't know, it was a mess. It was a,
yeah. Everybody who's ever the exact same story.
It's like crack cocaine, isn't it? You just get addicted to those results and that performance. And you have to take this quite painful short-term hit for the long-term benefit of the business. And that's uncomfortable.
It's totally uncomfortable. And people don't like that, being uncomfortable. Hey, you've got a new book out, man. So I wanted you to talk about Sweet Spot. Maybe, you know, talk about the book. We've got the links. We'll put that in the recap. And Lee, if you would make a note, let's put the talent assessment chart document in the recap too for everybody that's here, and so that this person that put the question can have a copy of it. But walk us through Sweet Spot a little bit, and then maybe in chat we can put how to get the book.
Sure, absolutely. So Sweet Spot is asking people about where they spend their time, and it's thinking about the activities that you have in your life that really add the most value, that you enjoy doing, that bring you the greatest benefit, and asking that difficult question of how much of your time are you really spending in your sweet spot, and why isn't it more? And everybody has in the top right hand corner of their chart a few activities that deliver most of the value and really make them feel engaged. And yeah, the fact is, for most of us, we spend much more time in the other three areas. So distractions, whereby things maybe that you're good at doing and you like doing, but they don't add much value, or draining things that are important and need to get done, but don't sit within your skill set, or just nasty disasters that, you know, for example, we had some changes in the team, and I ended up doing like the manuals, you know, the materials and sending that. And it just, you feel like this is a bad use of my time and I hate doing it. And so it challenges people to list those things out and then identify how to get rid of them. And there's 4 ways of doing that. We call it SODA. So some things you can just stop doing. You set good boundaries. You say no, you know, maybe it's that team member that isn't performing, or it's a customer that's not paying well, or it's just an activity that you've agreed to do pro bono, but actually is sucking up a lot of time. And you've got outsourcing. So I had this last year, and you know, we've brought in marketing resource, and it's been unlocked all sorts of growth in our organization. Delegation, which people often avoid because, you know, just the act of finding somebody and teaching them how to do it takes energy, and so it's easy to avoid. And then automation, so which people often avoid because you have to then code stuff into, you have to pay on a subscription basis. But what's really interesting about it is when you do a lot of sweet spot activities with people, And it's kind of the hidden secret sauce behind a lot of entrepreneurs, is that they have this mentality of constantly getting rid of the things that don't sit within their unique skill set. And the people that don't do that, if you really get under the skin of understanding why, a lot of it tends to be the cost of things. You know, this idea that you've got to pay first, you've got to hire someone, or you've got to pay for that outsourcing before you get the benefit of the time saving. And a lot of people, for example, they look at successful people and say, well, that person has a PA. And when I get big and rich, I'll get a PA, rather than thinking, well, maybe that person has always had a mindset of paying money to hand over low value activities to others before it was comfortable for them. So that's a lot of the sweet spot mindset. What we find is particularly beneficial for us within teams.
I'm sorry, Unpack Soda was stop,
outsource,
outsource,
delegate, and automate.
All right, perfect. So that acronym works really well. Keep going.
Yeah, and it's particularly a beneficial activity within teams. If you do the sweet spot exercise with team members, what it tells you is how each person in the team wants to develop. So we have a coach here in our team, Sophie, and I was giving her more facilitation work in front of the room. We did a sweet spot activity. So actually, I'm a coach. Facilitation isn't my thing. It's not in my sweet spot. So that was able to help me guide her in her development of her career. It also gives this huge productivity kick, right? Because as soon as you sit everyone down in a room together and identify what things they want to get rid out of their work, they trade activities there and then in the room. I mean, I've had CEOs join our workshops, and in a 1 hour workshop, they will identify 100 hours per month of time saving of things that they can just clear out. So it's a habit. It's every 3 months you go through this clear out. It improves your productivity, but more importantly, it kind of sets you on that path in life of finding out and chasing what it is that you're particularly good at. And like any good habit, it becomes a mindset. So you start to make better decisions over time around how you spend your time. So for example, guys that I've done this several times with, I say, you know what, I chose the express service since I started doing this, or I've stopped driving. I'll have people drive me places, and my decision making has just improved. So there's a whole mindset shift. So it started from an exercise that I would do with my team members to get to the bottom of how they wanted to develop. But what I've realized is that there's a mindset there that really sits at the heart of successful entrepreneurs. And there's a discipline there in terms of removing things. And you know, so we did a workshop in Switzerland a few months ago, a panel of 3 CEOs. So these guys all have the same title, right? They're all CEOs of high growth entrepreneurial companies, mostly in the IT space. But their version of that position was quite different. Right? There's one guy who says, well, I am the CEO, but my sweet spot is I'm all about the people. I love bringing in talent, developing those people, and their success is my success. All the other operational sales stuff, I hire other people to do. Another guy, he said, well, I always love the new ventures in our business. I like bringing in new businesses. I'll bring them up. When they reach a certain size of maturity, I want to hand that over to other people. And the third guy, he said, well, I love taking messy, dirty customer data and turning that into great dashboards. And that's obviously what the business, I'm still the best person in the business to do this. So 3 guys, all CEOs, totally different versions of that role and what that means. And so that journey is one that each of us is on, and it helps people to uncover and accelerate that discovery.
Is that the book right there?
There it is. Yeah, absolutely. And there's a whole website, www.sweetspot.guru. You can download the worksheet for free, so you can do it yourself. And obviously you can get the book. There's an e-version, and then there's the print copy as well.
Is the print copy on Amazon yet? Because last time I went, it was only Kindle.
So the print copy is on Amazon over here. To get it delivered to the States, you've got to go to the Sweet Spot website, so sweetspot.guru, and then we've got an international shipping arrangement with the printers.
All right, cool. And that's in the chat for everybody to just click on and go there and buy copies of books for your entire team, right?
That's right. Yeah, and there's a discount if you get a box.
How long does the exercise take? Is it an hour-long thing with a group of 10, or?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, it's about an hour, 90 minutes to do it in a workshop with a team. If you sit down with someone one-to-one, you can do it in half an hour. And often what people do is they make sweet spot coaching pairs. So they'll coach each other for like half an hour, 45 minutes.
We should create a workshop for you to do for all the people that we have access to, and just invite them in to do a sweet spot.
100%. I would love to do that. Of course.
We'll get that done. If you've got additional questions, you've got a couple of A-brains on here, so let us know what you need. Hey, we'll jump back on a little bit of quarantine. I wanted to kind of hear from you. One of the things that we're challenged with in the U.S., one of the things that we work with our members on, it feels like there's a new question about this particular topic constantly. And one of the things that nobody has figured out yet, and everybody wants everybody else to just tell them what to go do, and I don't think that's actually possible, is work from home. So this remote work versus coming into an office versus I'm fearful to come into an office versus I got 2 kids at home and I can't get my shit done, or my hours, like there's 1,000 little variables. Just give us, what are you seeing? What are you seeing in your members? What are you hearing in the marketplace? And anything that would help people be better at this?
Yeah, so I've been doing a series of podcasts on exactly this question, and we call it the new normal over here. And what does that look like in terms of working practices for high growth companies over here? And actually at heart, the question is, what we found is a talent question. It really depends on the kinds of people that you have, and particularly it depends on their age and where they live. So in general, there's a younger demographic in city centers that want to get back to offices quickly because their home situation is just not set up for home working. They're in flats, they've got flat shares, and the office is like their key social spaces where they interact with people. And so those companies are really pushing hard to get back into the offices. Plus the consequences of them in terms of the illness aren't quite so risky. And then you've got companies whereby people living maybe in larger homes that have longer commutes, that have children at home. And for them, they actually would prefer to continue working at home. They can set up a home office, they can make the investments in all the technology, and saving that commute and being at home whilst the children are schooled at home. So what we see is companies are broadly on a couple of different trajectories, right? You've got the younger city central kind of businesses where those younger teams and those people are coming back. Then you've got sort of regional companies with maybe older workforces, like teams of lawyers and academics and those sorts of things, particularly ones where they travel a lot. They, in many cases, they're kind of eliminating their offices altogether. They're just never going to go back. And then a lot of companies are somewhere in the middle. So they're having to figure out these mixed working arrangements whereby, maybe they're inviting the older members of the team to come in a couple of days a week. But those that want to can come in. So they're having to refit all their offices, more meeting space, more kind of drop-in space, and less of the fixed desk for everybody, because the expectation of everybody coming in every day in most of the companies that we're talking to is no longer there. How about you guys? What are you seeing there?
Very similar. It's interesting that you talk about, like demographic and living situation, like where they are. And because I think that's very, very true. And it's an insight that I hadn't thought about. So I appreciate you to bring that to the table. Yeah, I think, we got a lot of companies here that are returning or attempting to return to the office. And, that's just, there's a whole nother series of challenges that pop up with that, especially as, COVID count continues to climb like, crazy here. So there's a little bit of fear factor of coming back into the office across all organizations. Every organization that I'm exposed to are thinking about how do we do more of a hybrid model, knowing that some people will need to come back just because of the roles. I have a couple that have shut down their offices completely and everything will be remote from now on. I've got big companies that are, like chunks of 500 people that will be remote work. I think it's an opportunity. Again, this is the exponential growth window, window is cracked. I think it's an opportunity for everybody to look at the way they work, how they source talent, how they do their training, how they do their onboarding, how they do the communications, and really think about, do we need that? I tell a story on a webinar that I do around Steve Martin. The movie The Jerk. You ever see the movie The Jerk?
I certainly know Steve Martin. I've seen clips of it. Yeah.
Okay, so there's a scene, and he invents that little device called the OptiGrab. It's how you grab your glasses so you don't have to touch your glasses. And he makes $1 gazillion doing it. Well, come to find out, it makes you cross-eyed, and like everybody's going cross-eyed. His ass gets sued like crazy, and he loses everything. So there's a scene in this movie, right, where he's in his home, in his mansion, and they're like moving shit out of his house because everything's being repoed. And he's all down in the dumps, and he walks around and he starts grabbing something. He's like, all I need is this thermos. And he puts a thermos under his arm. All I need is this lamp. And he's got like 7 things. And he walks out of his life and he walks down the road with his 7 things. And he's like, all I need in life are these 7 things. And if I go back and think about when we left the office, that's a little bit about kind of like how we left the office. We just shut the damn thing down, grabbed our 7 things. This is what I need. And we went and operated. So it makes you, I think we have to question the value. What is the true value of holding on to the old ways of doing things, whether that be the structure of an office, the layout of an office in itself, a location, whatever the structure may be. And could we take this as an opportunity, because we already got a lot of disruption, to create a little extra disruption that moves us leaps and bounds forward? So again, I like this exponential window open of opportunity. Don't miss it. Because if you're going to make this kind of a change, there will never, ever be another opportunity like right now to make it.
Yeah, exactly. And I had sort of a verbatim conversation with one of our members. So when I did this series of podcasts, I went into it with this enthusiasm and excitement about particularly one of our members that's just planning to go totally virtual, both in their customer delivery and also removing the office. And I was surprised to see actually how few companies were taking that approach. And some of them, like I say, it was to do with the generational cohort that they had. But a lot of them, it was, they also talk about like the benefit of having people together in a room, and that you can bounce ideas off each other. And I found there's all sorts of reasons why people actually like offices. But I was on a call recently with Sam Zell, who's this US real estate property billionaire. And he was saying, everybody's talking about being sort of permanently based from home for a long time. And the interviewer was saying, oh, it's great. I'm not going to have to go through Penn Station anymore. And he said, yeah, that's just absolutely fine, right up until the moment where your competitor goes to visit your customer. And so yes, for a lot of us, particularly those, we've always been a remote business, and I think we will be for as long as I'm in charge. But for those that had offices, even this company that I started off thinking they will go, I do see them. They were asking, for example, for our next planning session to go meet in the hotel. I was saying, I'm going to call you on this, because everything that you've been saying about you wanting your customers to do remotely, I'm going to challenge you the same thing. And some of those habits are going to be hard to break. And you're absolutely right about the window of opportunity, because if you don't do it now, if you don't use this window of opportunity to not go back to the offices, unpicking that later on is just going to be so much harder.
Yeah, one of the level of disruption that we've had and continue to have and will continue to have because of COVID-19 gives us the ability to disrupt even more without a lot of additional disruption. That's a little bit tongue-tied, but because it's so crazy, a little bit more crazy is just not that much more.
Yes.
Change the CRM out, build a new website, change the way you do this, move your office, close your office, put a new team in place. Who cares? This is, it's not that much more, right?
Get pen tattoos.
Yeah. We got a question. It's actually about pursuing coaching and facilitation. It's interesting. We had a couple of coaching questions, so I wrote some notes of like future things we could go do. I have a hospitality business which has been decimated by the crisis. I'm fighting to keep it alive. We can talk about that separately if you want to. However, I think it's an opportune time for me to change my involvement and to pursue coaching facilitation. Any questions I should consider in making this decision?
Well, my first suggestion would be for that person to do a sweet spot exercise, because that will help them to understand, is that something that you've already been doing? There's interesting signposts in life. I personally believe like the journey of entrepreneurship fundamentally is a journey of self-discovery. It's about understanding who you are inside and what actually works for you and what doesn't. Because as a young person, there was all sorts of things that I thought I wanted. I thought I wanted to be a CEO of a company of a certain size so that I could have like people in all the functional units. And this was like an ambition of mine for a long time. And I achieved it. And when I got there, I realized, because I'm not really a great people person, I'll be honest with you. And I actually didn't like it as much as I wanted.
We know.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Andy. Yes. And I tell myself that I think I want things, but life and experience teaches me what's actually good for me and what isn't. And so that journey of self-discovery is what it's really all about. But there's always guideposts there. People give us feedback. Like if, for example, I've always heard people say certain bits of feedback to me in terms of what I do well, what I don't do well. There's certain things that I like reading, those topics, and they're clues and hints and guideposts as to the direction that I need to travel in my life. And so I would say to that person, yeah, do a sweet spot activity by all means, but have you been drawn to that kind of a role? Are you somebody that likes to ask others a lot of questions rather than being involved in the fray yourself? Because it is quite a different role, running a company and being a coach. And it's a good fit for some people and less so for others.
Yeah, and I think there's a difference between facilitation and coaching. So the words are put together here. Facilitation is very much moving a process from A to Z in a room, where coaching is, I would say, assisting in that becoming a behavior along the path. So the two are, I think, a little bit mutually exclusive, and you need to be good at both if you're going to be both. Questions you consider asking yourself before making my decision. This world is full of coaches. This world is full of facilitators. I mean, I get 50 calls a year from somebody wanting to join PetraCoach and be a PetraCoach. And I can tell you that we actually end up talking to maybe 4, 3. I mean, everybody wants to do this work. Not very many people can do this work at the level that it truly deserves to be done. All right. So there's a lot of people that'll hang a shingle. I don't know what your age is, but I would think I've seen people say, I'm a life coach. And I'm like, how old are you? Well, I'm 24. What do you mean? How are you coaching someone on life skills if you're 24? You don't even have your life skills yet. So, and that may, rub some people the wrong way, but I want, if I'm going to hire somebody to coach me on something, I want my money manager to have more money than me. I want I need to have, if somebody's going to coach me in something, I need them to be better at it than I'm at it already.
Yeah. So I can remember being in a forum one time. So, we're both EO members, and forum is where you get together with a group of other entrepreneurs. And one of the things that you do in forum is you're required to coach each other. So every month somebody comes with a difficult issue and you ask one another questions, and you can't be giving advice. You really just have to ask questions without thinking through what the solution for them would be. And I heard a bunch of times, I can remember one time being away on a retreat, and everyone in the room listening to me coaching, doing an open coaching, at the end of it, so turning around saying, wow, you're really good at that. And I heard that a few times before I thought about, maybe. And I found myself, as well as running my company, coaching others on the tools that we use in the Rockefeller Habit. So it's something that I had in my life. It wasn't, I suddenly made this decision to go and do a whole new thing. And that's how life works. That's what I mean when I say clues and hints and guide points. The wrong reason for doing this is that you see Jim down the road making money doing coaching and thinking, well, that looks like a sweet gig. Because like anything else, to get established as a coach, it takes a lot of practice, it takes a lot of training, and you've got to walk the floorboards for 6 months, 12 months, 2 years, failures, relationships that haven't worked out, sales that haven't come in. And you're only going to do that if there's this deep fit with you and your own personal skill set.
Yeah, that's a good point. We always say you need 100 days in the room before you're good. And then you're just kind of good. Like, you need to go do it 100 days and then you're just good. You're on your way to great. Show me 500 and then we'll talk about what skills you need to still go get. So there's a lot, as I said, there's a lot of people that are hanging shingles and going doing this work, but they don't really have the experience to do it. And I can remember when I first stepped out into this space, much like you, when I had my telecom business, we were, I was helping people do daily huddles in their companies. They were coming in and visiting, and I was, so it was a little bit of the same exact story. But, walking out and doing some of the first things that I did while I was trying to figure out if I wanted to start this organization, I charged some guy $500 to come in and spend an entire day with his company and teach their salespeople. Like, I didn't know how to do that, but I would spend 12 hours on a presentation. I'd build some tools. I'd read 7 books, and then I'd show up and work an entire day for $500. I got 2 weeks worth of work in something I'd go deliver for $500, but I would have to go do that over and over and over and over. You called it walking the boards. It's the it's hey, I'm just going to put in the work and put in the work and get the reps and get the reps and get the reps. I'm not going to worry about, am I gaining anything other than experience, because my experience is what's going to lead me to that place in the future.
Yeah. I was on an event recently. There was a speaker guy, really smart guy, Daniel Priestley, used to be an EO member here, and he's written several books, including Key Person of Influence. So how about you can an influential person in your industry. And someone asked him about his investment portfolio, because he runs an accelerator these days. And the question was an opportunistic question. It says, what are you investing in right now, given COVID-19 and all these sorts of things? Because they were looking, where can I pick up an opportunity? And the guy gave such an answer. He says, I've invested in a portfolio of businesses that are right for me. And it was this very sort of deliberate thing saying, don't get into a business because you think there's quick money to be made. And he gave this formula. I still have it on the wall here. He says, patience plus self-awareness leads to the right business for you. And that really struck a chord for me, because there isn't a right or wrong answer about coaching. It's just, there's a right and wrong answer for you.
All right. That's really cool. So if you got other questions, we have about 6 more minutes. I've got a list of stuff to ask you. Our team sent me a list. They said, hey, please be sure and ask Andy Clayton all 42 of these questions. We're not going to get to all of them.
Let's rattle through it then.
Let's see. What's the biggest challenge in the country overall right now? Is it like, and some of the examples might be hospital space, resources, new spikes in cases? What do you think the biggest challenge is? Or it could be economic in some manner.
Yeah, so by and large, the hospitals, they seem to have managed their capacity well. It's easy to shut stuff off, but then unpicking that and getting things going again is pretty hard. So the schools is a really good example at the moment. So people are saying, well, we want small class sizes. The unions are saying, is it safe for the teachers? And how do you coordinate all the various elements of society in a way so that people switch stuff on concurrently? And it's tricky, it's difficult. Retail is really hard. So the shops are opening, but people aren't going. So does that mean that they'll close down again because there isn't the demand? And how do you kind of push people to do that? So it's, yeah, we still have cases and we have of deaths, and probably we'll be dealing with social distancing and sort of some rolling lockdowns for a while. But really, it's about getting the economy going again. And yeah, we were talking just now about loans and whatnot, and you were saying how people are going to pay back. The thing that concerns me is what I would call zombie companies. So I've got a friend of mine, and he's got a bunch of different businesses, and one of them is a PR agency. It's basically kids handing out flyers. And this business has been hammered. Other businesses in his group have done really well. And he's facing this situation whereby he's taken out previously some loans. So he's got debt on this business. And it's kind of at the point whereby if he switches it on, he would have to borrow more money, work maybe for 2 years just to get back to a position whereby he can pay all the debt that he has on this business. And there must be so many guys around the country in that sort of position. So it's alive, but it's not alive. And what's going to happen to all these zombie companies? The government will step in for a little while and furlough people, but after a certain point, it just doesn't make sense anymore. So there's a whole, like you said, there'll be strings of bankruptcies in some cases. And then people just having to slog out really tough trading conditions for however long it takes.
Yeah, that's a really good way to look at that. And I know that if there's some of the other coaches on this call, I see Chip and Jennifer on here. That's a great way to take that. I know they just wrote that down. They're going to go tell everybody about it. I think it was kind of explained to me a couple months ago. I guess I was on a call with an analyst, and he was telling me, he was giving me all the analyst information, and I said, dude, boil that down to 5th grade English for me so I understand what the hell you're talking about. And he said, hey, look, here's the deal. The economy itself is going to be fine. We're talking about the U.S. economy. The U.S. economy, all the markers, everything is going to be fine. The challenge is what's underlying the economy. The segments of business, there are complete segments of business, we all know this is true, are going to go away. Like that's your zombies and the ones that are already gone, and there's going to be some more in the future that go away. They're going to go away. However, there are a bunch of segments of business that are going to thrive. They already are, some, and there's going to be a bunch of new ones that get created. Like the economy is the economy. It's going to be fine. It's just where it comes from is going to shift dramatically. And that's what we need business owners and people to start thinking about is where am I going to play in that space? If I'm a zombie, do I just push it on out and go do something different? Do I take my talents and some skill sets and point it in a different direction? The window is open We got to make sure that we're going through the damn thing. Hey, will you please share, looks like Lisa from New Orleans would like for you to share that formula one more time.
Oh, okay. Patience plus self-awareness leads to the right business for you. Underline for you.
All right. And I think she's going to write that down and go share it with Beth. You don't know what that means, but she's hopefully laughing along with me right now. You got any questions? You got anything that's popped up in your mind recently? We just got a few more minutes.
Yeah, I mean, I'm curious to hear what the situation is over in the States, because what we see there is case numbers rising again in certain parts of the country. And does that mean that, and one thing that I was kind of thinking about early on in this is, does that mean that states versus states are going to start having like quarantining each other or borders closing up? And do you see any hints of those sorts of things starting?
Yeah, that's already started. So New York, New Jersey, Connecticut have picked some series of states and said travel to, except for essential. There's some, language in there that allows some travel to come in and out. But they've said without it, you can't get in. If you're just traveling, if you're going to go see the Statue of Liberty, we're not going to invite you in to go do that right now.
Right.
But if you've got some essential work that's happening, you can still come in. So they're limiting that for sure. I think that's going to be here for a bit. I think as things continue to spike in different areas, that they have the ability to do that, even down to the county and city level. So I think you could see that come as well. You've seen the case counts, man. That's what's the answer to that? I've been telling the team, and people can disagree with me. It's fine. Wear a mask, wash your hands. The virus doesn't automatically jump into your mouth. You have to grab it and put it in your mouth. So keep your hands off your face. Keep away from, groups of people or people that are, it feels like a fairly simple formula to kind of keep this thing down, but that's a big pushback too. I mean, there's big groups of people here who do not want to go wear a face mask in public, and they're just refusing to go do it. We in Nashville on Monday, and I don't live in Nashville, I'm outside of Nashville. That was a new ordinance, and I don't know what the fines are or anything, but I drove through Nashville yesterday, and I didn't see a single person wearing a mask, and they were all outside. So again, right. It makes sense to do it. Just do it. What can it hurt?
So we've had this huge experiment in Europe over the past 20 years, whereby the EU has removed borders. It's the Schengen Agreement. So my father lives in Belgium, so he can drive down to France. And it's this interesting experience when you drive down the motorway, the freeway, is that you go past all of these derelict border posts. And we've almost stopped noticing them there. And there's these signs which said you're traveling into this other country, but it's become meaningless. And it's a bit like going state to state in the US. What's happened in the past couple of months is that, they've
fired them up.
Right, exactly. So we have a few members in Switzerland, and a city like Geneva, which is right on the border between France and Switzerland, they haven't had border controls there for years. And now there's like a 3-hour tailback. And so, because we're not quite like the States, it's a more recent thing, but borders have reappeared where there previously were none. And it's kind of a shocking thing. Because a whole generation of people have grown up without that. Now, they are coming down again now, and you can drive through again. But I was wondering if that was a similar thing that was emerging in the States, because for you guys, it's not a couple of decades, right? It's a couple of 100 years. And
yeah, and we had it early. Everybody went home, thing went down, everybody got out, thing went up, stuff's starting to shut back down. I mean, we were saying grounded earlier. We were joking with Leah about being grounded, and that's very similar to the situation. You're grounded to your house. Don't come out of your house unless you absolutely have to. Don't come out of your house, and then you break out and go do stuff that potentially spreads the disease a little bit more, the virus a little bit more, and you get grounded. It's no different than your dad said, stay in your room for a week. You sneak out on the weekend again, and you get another extra week. I mean, it feels like a little bit of that back and forth is what we're going to play for a bit.
So where I see that we will all be in a few months' time is that the hard lockdown will be behind us. But there's a few things that will stay, right? Social distancing, that's clearly around for some time. International travel is clearly going to be off the cards for a considerable amount of time. So whereas, you know, the day-to-day stuff in terms of like restaurants and retail and that stuff, that there is a way to figure out how to do that. And then some form of technology, so contact tracing apps, some form of surveillance so that people can track where the disease is. These are things that are going to have to be around for a while.
We're talking about restaurants, and I'll kind of wrap up on this. I want to go back all the way to this exponential growth. Don't miss that window of opportunity. And we work with some restaurant groups, and everybody's fighting to get back. You know, this was fighting to stay in the business. We got restaurant groups who are fighting to stay in their restaurants. Like, you know, there's a place here in Franklin called South Hall, and it's a couple of years. It's been around a couple of years. They've attempted to kind of get it going. It's kind of a grassroots thing. They got about 60 or 70 acres here in town, and it's a farm to table. You know, chef cooks really good meals, but they don't really have a structure. All they have is these really big tables in the middle of a field. But they have the facilities for making the food, right? And they have all of the food, you know, farm to table abilities. Like, to me, that's the future of a restaurant. You don't need 4 walls wrapped around you. You might need a big tent, right? Just in case it rains, or, you know, it's the dew's falling, or whatever that might look like. But if you have, you know, amazing ventilation, you spread far enough point, you got 60 spread out as far as you need to, and you really good things with food or alcohol or drinks or whatever, go do that. Like, get out of the 4 walls that's cramped where you got to stand in line to get some shit, and just spread out. Like, that just feels like a natural progression. I think South Hall, I love that. You know, I like that place. I think it's going to be a place that really picks up where some of the other restaurants don't.
Yeah, sure. And there's new models appearing in each industry, right? Most of them, though, I suppose if I see one overall trend in the members that we work with, it's increasing digitization. So, you know, we've got companies whereby virtual service delivery along with remote working within the team, and therefore accelerating the development of their digital service products. Similarly, others that are having to accelerate their AI product development and are using this period as a time to accelerate that. So if I was to sort of summarize the trend that I see in our members, they're using this as the opportunity to accelerate the technology and digitization components of their businesses.
Yeah, I'd agree. Well, listen, man, we're up on time.
All right.
It's good to see you. Keep doing great things over there. And I know that you've got everything on a great path. If we can do anything to support you, please let us know. I know the audience love hearing from you. This is recorded. It'll be on the website as well, so you can grab it and post it around. Everybody that's still on the call, thanks for hanging in with us for this long. Please stay in touch. If you need something, you can always drop us a line at info at petracoach.com, and we'll get back to you. On the website, there's a COVID-19 tab at the top of the website. You can jump on there, and there's tons and tons of resources. Looks like somebody just bought a book, Andy. So there you go.
Nice job, Sandra. Enjoy.
Have a good day, everybody. Talk to you later, my friend.
Thanks, Andy.